At 6:15 in the morning on February 24, 2026, while most of Washington was still asleep, Donald Trump picked up his phone and fired off a message that will be remembered as the moment American trade hegemony began its terminal collapse. He did not consult Congress. He did not inform his own Commerce Department. He did not convene his national security advisors or run the decision through legal review. He simply typed out an ultimatum to Canada, the largest trading partner and closest ally the United States has ever had, and pressed send. The threat was blunt, brutal, and designed to terrify. Either Canada surrenders to American demands, or within 14 days, a 35% tariff would be imposed on every single Canadian product entering the United States. Total economic warfare. No exceptions, no negotiations. Submit or be destroyed. Trump was operating from a playbook that had worked for him his entire career. Escalate with overwhelming force. Make the threat so catastrophic that the other side has no choice but to fold. He assumed that Mark Carney, like every Canadian leader before him, would be on the first plane to Washington begging for mercy, offering whatever concessions necessary to avoid economic annihilation. He assumed that Canada needed America far more than America needed Canada. He assumed that the sheer gravity of American economic power made resistance impossible. By noon, every single one of those assumptions had been systematically demolished. What Donald Trump did not know, what his intelligence services completely failed to detect, was that Mark Carney had seen this attack coming weeks in advance. While Trump was planning his ambush, Carney was running war games. Deep in the secure facilities of the Canadian government, the Prime Minister had assembled his top economic strategists, trade lawyers, and military logistics experts. They had modeled every possible American escalation. They had mapped every vulnerability in the U.S. economy that could be exploited. They had prepared response protocols for scenarios ranging from targeted tariffs to complete trade severance. When Trump's ultimatum landed, it was not a surprise. It was a trigger. Carney had been waiting for exactly this moment, and now he had the justification to execute a counterattack that would expose the fundamental weakness at the heart of American power. At 11:00 a.m., Mark Carney appeared before cameras in Ottawa. Watch the footage carefully. There is no panic in his eyes. There is no nervousness in his voice. There is only the cold, methodical calm of a man who knows exactly what he is about to do and exactly how devastating it will be. He began by rejecting Trump's ultimatum in terms that left no room for interpretation. Canada is not a satellite state. Canada does not accept blackmail. Canada will not be intimidated by threats from any nation, regardless of size. And then he unveiled the three-stage counterattack that would bring Wall Street to its knees within hours. The first strike was legal. Carney announced that Canada was immediately invoking Article 31.2 of the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, the very trade deal that Donald Trump himself had signed and celebrated as the greatest agreement in history. Under that article, any party that believes another has violated the terms of the agreement can trigger a formal dispute resolution process with binding international arbitration. By imposing unilateral tariffs without the consultations and procedures required by the treaty, Trump had violated his own agreement. Carney was now dragging the President of the United States before an international tribunal, positioning him not as a strong leader protecting American interests, but as a lawless actor who breaks his own treaties when convenient. The legal battle would take months to resolve, but the immediate effect was devastating for American credibility. Every other nation watching this unfold was now forced to ask themselves a simple question. If the United States will violate a treaty with its closest ally, what is any American agreement actually worth? The second strike was economic. Canada announced immediate retaliatory tariffs of 35% on American goods, matching Trump's threat dollar for dollar. But Carney's team had not selected their targets randomly. They had spent weeks analyzing American export patterns, identifying which products flowed to which states, and calculating where tariffs would inflict maximum political damage. The Canadian retaliation was surgically aimed at states that had voted for Donald Trump, agricultural products from the Midwest, manufactured goods from the industrial heartland, energy equipment from Texas. The message was unmistakable. If Trump wanted to weaponize trade, Canada would ensure that his own voters paid the price. Within hours, agricultural associations and manufacturing lobbies were flooding congressional offices with panicked calls, demanding that someone stop the president before he destroyed their markets. But the third strike was the one that sent Washington into complete meltdown. Mark Carney announced that Canada was immediately suspending all exports of critical minerals to the United States Defense Industrial Base: cobalt, lithium, nickel, rare earth elements, the raw materials without which Lockheed Martin cannot build an F-35 fighter jet, the minerals without which Raytheon cannot manufacture a Patriot missile battery, the resources without which Northrop Grumman cannot produce advanced radar systems. Canada supplies a significant percentage of these materials to American defense contractors, and there is no alternative source that can be activated quickly. Carney had just placed a chokehold on the Pentagon's ability to build weapons. The moment those words left Carney's mouth, Wall Street collapsed. The S&P 500 began hemorrhaging value within minutes. Defense stocks entered freefall as investors calculated the implications of a critical minerals embargo. Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics, all of them plunging as traders realized that their production lines were about to face severe disruption. The Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped over 900 points in the first 2 hours of trading. Currency markets reacted with the dollar weakening against the Canadian dollar, the euro, and the yen. The volatility index spiked as uncertainty gripped every corner of the financial system. In a single morning, Mark Carney had demonstrated that Canada possessed leverage that no one in Washington had properly assessed. At 3:17 p.m., Donald Trump attempted to regain control of the narrative. He posted on social media, calling Carney's announcement a bluff. He claimed that Canada would never follow through on the minerals embargo because it would hurt their own economy. He insisted that the United States would find alternative suppliers within days. He dismissed the USMCA complaint as meaningless theater. But the markets did not believe him. The stocks continued to fall. The phone lines into the White House continued to burn with panicked calls from defense contractors and agricultural exporters. Trump's own Republican allies in Congress began quietly suggesting that perhaps the president had miscalculated. The fundamental problem Trump now faces is that he has trapped himself in a position with no good exits. If he backs down, if he withdraws the tariff threat and seeks a negotiated resolution, he will be humiliated on the global stage. Every adversary, every competitor, every ally who has ever been threatened by American economic coercion will see that the threats are hollow. They will see that a middle power with strategic resources can stare down the United States and win. Trump's entire brand is built on never backing down, on always winning, on dominating every negotiation through sheer force of will. A retreat from Canada would shatter that image permanently. But if he continues, if he actually implements the 35% tariffs, the consequences will be catastrophic. The Canadian retaliation will devastate American exporters. The minerals embargo will cripple defense production. The legal challenge will drag American trade policy into international arbitration for years. The economic damage will land directly on the voters Trump needs to maintain political support. He is facing a choice between humiliation and self-destruction. The contrast between the two leaders has never been more stark. Donald Trump governs by impulse. He woke up on February 24th and decided to threaten America's closest ally without consulting anyone who might have warned him of the consequences. He assumed that aggression alone would produce submission. He treated a G7 nation with a sophisticated economy and abundant strategic resources as though it were a helpless dependent with no options. Mark Carney governs by systems. He anticipated this confrontation months in advance. He assembled teams to analyze vulnerabilities and prepare responses. He positioned Canada to absorb the initial blow and deliver a counterattack that would be impossible to ignore. When the moment came, he executed with precision that left Washington stunned. Trump fights with rage. Carney fights with preparation. And in this confrontation, preparation is winning decisively. The world is now watching and waiting for March 3rd. On that date, Mark Carney is scheduled to deliver a historic address to the Canadian Parliament. Sources describe it as the moment when Canada will formalize its strategic pivot away from American market dependence. The speech is expected to announce accelerated trade negotiations with the European Union, the United Kingdom, and Indo-Pacific partners. It is expected to outline massive investment in domestic manufacturing to reduce reliance on American supply chains. It is expected to present a vision of Canadian economic sovereignty that treats the United States as one market among many, and an unreliable one at that. If the speech delivers what insiders predict, it will represent the most significant realignment of North American economic relations since the original free trade agreements. The immediate crisis has already produced measurable damage. American defense contractors are scrambling to assess stockpiles of Canadian-sourced materials. Agricultural exporters are calculating losses from retaliatory tariffs. Financial analysts are downgrading forecasts for American manufacturing. The Chamber of Commerce is lobbying furiously for de-escalation. But Trump has shown no willingness to retreat, and Carney has shown no willingness to compromise. The 14-day clock is ticking toward implementation, and every day without resolution increases the probability of full-scale economic rupture. This is what happens when a leader who governs by intimidation meets a leader who governs by preparation. Trump expected Canada to fold because folding is what he believes weaker parties always do. He did not consider that Canada had been preparing for this fight. He did not consider that his own trade agreement contained provisions that could be used against him. He did not consider that critical minerals gave Canada power over American defense production. He fired his ultimatum into the dark, expecting easy victory, and discovered that his target had been waiting with weapons drawn. Mark Carney demonstrated that the costs of submission are higher than the costs of resistance. He proved that a nation with strategic resources can turn American pressure into American vulnerability. Washington is paralyzed. Wall Street is bleeding. The whole world is watching to see whether Trump will choose humiliation or self-destruction. Either way, the era of American trade dominance ended on February 24, 2026.